All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for the 2020 Community Changemakers Summit and for this conversation about legal services. My name is Aaron Gonzales. I'm the co-executive director at the Catalogue for Philanthropy. I'm very excited to be here with all of you and very excited for the conversation we're about to have. We have four wonderful panelists here who are joining us to talk about the issues their organizations are facing. And I'll give them a chance to introduce themselves in just a moment. Before we get started, I just wanted to mention we have a limited amount of time, but we will do our best to reserve a few minutes for audience questions at the end. If you do have questions, feel free to enter them in the chat in the right-hand panel of your screen, and we'll be sure and collect those and try to address those at the end as we have time. And with that, I'll go ahead and get started. Dan, do you want to go ahead and kick us off? Tell us who you are, who you work for, and what it is that you and your organization do.
Yes, great. My name is Dan Clark. I'm the Director of Eviction Defense Services at Rising for Justice. We're formerly DC law students in court. Rising for Justice is unique in that we are both a law school clinic and a direct legal services provider. Each semester we enroll approximately 25 students from DC-based law schools, and those students are supervised by experienced clinical instructors and practitioners. And those students work side by side with a team of staff attorneys providing services primarily in the housing area and with a focus on eviction defense.
And that's great. I should reveal a little secret. In my prior life, I was an attorney and did a lot of pro bono work in this space. So this is a session that's near and dear to my heart. So thank you for that, Dan. Gabby, you want to go next?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for hosting this event and inviting us to participate. I'm Gabby Majewski, the Executive Director of DC Affordable Law Firm. DC Affordable Law Firm was created 5 years ago and remains the only nonprofit civil legal service provider in the district that's focused on the direct provision of high quality and accessible legal services to the more than 125,000 hardworking modest means DC residents. These are the people who earn too much to qualify for the wide range of free legal services available in the district, but can't afford representation by private attorneys. And so in DC, that's 1 out of 5 Washingtonians that fall into this forgotten middle when it comes to legal services. And so we focus on catering to the family law, probate, and immigration needs of those who are living 2 to 4 times above the federal poverty level. And so what that actually looks like is a family of 4 with a household income just over $52,000 living in a city that we know that has extremely high costs of living. So all of our attorneys in terms of our programmatics are recent graduates from Georgetown University Law Center, and this year we actually just expanded to include graduates from the DC's only public law school, the University of the District of Columbia David A. Clark School of Law. And so we really, much like Rising for Justice, focus on serving as a catalyst for the public interest careers of attorneys who are eager to give back and be a part of their communities. And so I am proud to say that this year, in spite of many challenges, our small but mighty team of 9 has served just over 300 community members across all of our practice areas. And so we continue to tailor our services and really expand programs to meet the needs of families who would otherwise fall through the cracks.
No, that's great. I like that term, the forgotten middle. I think that's definitely something applicable in the not only legal services, but in other service areas as well. Thank you, Gabby. Appreciate it. How about Penelope? You want to tell us about you and what you do?
Sure. Thank you so much, Aaron, for coordinating and moderating this panel. And I'm so honored to be a part of it. And the Catalogue for Philanthropy for calling attention to this work. So I am the co-founder and chief executive officer of Open City Advocates. We're a small grassroots organization that was established in 2005 to provide mentoring and legal representation for young people in the district after they have been found guilty or involved in a juvenile delinquent act, and have been committed to the care and custody of the Department of Youth Rehabilitation Services, where they're under supervision typically until age 21. So again, we provide the legal representation after they have been sentenced and throughout the reentry period, reconnecting them to all of the other community-based supports that they need in order to succeed, including housing, employment, education, and we also make sure that they are doing well if they're in a secure facility or in a group home in the district. In addition to our direct services, we also engage in systemic reform efforts, and we're so excited that this year, prior to COVID-19 hitting, we won an impact litigation case in the DC Court of Appeals, which recognized the right to legal counsel for young people after they have been sentenced and throughout their supervision. So we're in the process of implementing that exciting Court of Appeals decision amidst a pandemic when we can't have our meetings in person, but we're plugging along and making good progress there as well.
No, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. Such an important age group too for this type of services. And Elizabeth, would you share a little bit about you and what your organization does?
Yes, thank you all so much. I'm really excited to be here with this awesome panel and to be in the room with lots of amazing people. So thanks again from the Catalogue as well. So my name is Elizabeth Jones Valderrama, and I'm honored to be the Executive Director of OAR of Arlington, Alexandria, and Falls Church. And OAR has been around since 1974, and we really kind of see our mission in two areas. We talk about upstream work and downstream work. And the idea of like, if you're walking through and you see a river and all of a sudden you see a baby or a human being coming down and nobody's there, you run and help them. And then all of a sudden you start seeing lots and lots and lots of babies coming in. So you're always downstream trying to figure out what's going on. So our downstream efforts for OAR are things specifically around community service. So working with individuals who are sentenced to community service in lieu of incarceration. As well as then reentry, both pre-release and post-release with individuals of all genders and ages and families. And then we also have upstream work, because one of the things that's important is once you see all these people coming downstream, you got to figure out what the root of the cause, why are people falling in or being pushed in? And so OAR 5 years ago decided that we really did want to look at what is the cause of the work that we're doing, and with the criminal legal system that causes racism. That is one of the things that we are addressing head on, both internally as being an anti-racist, pro-Black and liberation organization, both from our internal staffing, but also within the community. And the goal for doing all this kind of upstream work with advocacy and anti-racism work is that at some point, OAR will cease to exist in the way that we exist. There won't be need for us or lots of other organizations on the down end of the stream, because we would have done such great work on the upstream. So OAR has been around since 1975. I have been around with OAR for 16 years, started my 16th year, and I'm just thrilled. We have an amazing group of staff members. We work with about 2,000 people who are direct participants who we're on their journey with and their families, as well as with over 700 community members on the anti-racism work.
That's great. I love that perspective of putting ourselves out of business. Wouldn't that be wonderful if we got to that point? Great. Well, I want to start off with a question about the COVID has obviously impacted so much of what our daily lives, what everybody does, not only in the work that we do, but just how we go about our daily lives. One of the things that's definitely had an impact on is the court system. I mean, court closures, court delays, and the way they do things have obviously been a big part of this. So wanted to ask and have you share a little bit about how those have impacted both the people you serve as well as your work, and how your organizations have shifted to address those changes and to continue to serve your clients. How about Elizabeth? You want to go ahead and kick us off on this?
Sure. So the court system that we work with most closely with our community service team is the Arlington County and City of Falls Church courts. And so what our experience was since the pandemic occurred was that obviously they closed, and there was a lot of cases that were kind of up in the air in terms of completing the volunteer and community services, as well as the other element we do is paying off court costs through community service. And so that certainly affected many of our participants, both from the sentencing component, but also from just kind of being in limbo, being able to finish up their volunteer hours and having those cases ideally closed or dismissed. and off their records if we could do that. So it was until I think for the last 3 months. So in July, all of a sudden, it just was packed with people. And so the courts were then trying to figure out how to support them as they were having, filled rooms. And they did a really good job with, with the COVID pandemic, trying to have the social distancing and doing all those pieces. But we certainly, one of the things that we're hoping to do going forward is really taking a look at how the courts are actually operating and whether from an anti-racism mindset, this is the way to go. Is community service the best thing to do? Is the way that we do court systems the best thing to do for the population that is mostly impacted, which is Black and Brown individuals?
No, absolutely. That's a great perspective, and I agree that the anti-racism aspect is something that kind of pervades everything that we're doing, quite frankly. And so that's a great perspective. Thank you for sharing that, Elizabeth. Dan, how was the court closures and COVID in general impacted your work and the clients that you're working with?
Well, it's been a two-sided coin for our clients. On the one hand, a big focus of our practice is eviction defense work. And so courts not moving forward is good for people who would be facing displacement, as a result of a court process for eviction. So that's been good. But on the other hand, it's been difficult for those who need to access the courts, those tenants who have been wrongfully evicted or who are facing severe conditions in their units that make their units uninhabitable. And so what Rising for Justice has done is joined with 5 other legal services providers in the district and created a centralized intake system so that one telephone number can be used by tenants who need to access legal services. And then those callers are distributed amongst the 6 legal services providers. And our student attorneys also participate in that process.
Oh, that's great. It's great collaboration. It's great to hear that the way that you're working together. Penelope, how has this kind of impacted your work and the people you work with?
Sure. So luckily, the court closures and the court delays have not impacted most of our clients because most of our clients are after they've already been through sentencing.
Sure.
So what we did at the start of this pandemic was really prioritize what we call the depopulation of the facilities. So many of our clients were in secure, locked juvenile jails, going through various programming, soon to be on their way towards release and reentry. And so we really, we were able to reach out to our community partners and our government agency partners to prioritize the rapid release of clients as quickly as possible. So we were able to do that. We, here in DC, the juvenile facility depopulated by about 85% within the first 2 to 3 weeks of the pandemic. So thankfully,
wow.
We all had, all of the legal service providers who represent young people in the district really came together and collectively pushed to make sure that our young people were safe because the juvenile jails themselves were just hotbeds for COVID-19. And I think that also the racial justice implication of that is huge. And so 100% of the young people who we serve are young people of color, and to make sure that they can get back to their communities and to keep trauma levels, PTSD, things of that sort to as low as possible. As you can imagine, being locked up, especially as a young person, is an incredibly traumatic experience. But then to also be in a locked facility where young people are being held in seclusion in their rooms for the physical safety of everyone increases that trauma incrementally. So that's how, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little feedback. That is how COVID impacted our work in the early days.
Mm-hmm. That's so important, both not only the physical safety and health safety from COVID and other issues, but also that, as you mentioned, mental health is so important. So it's great that you're able to achieve such a great and quick release at the onset of the pandemic. So thank you for sharing that. Gabby, can you share a little bit about that? And also too, for you, I know that in some ways it's kind of changed or at least increased certain types of requests you've gotten. Can you talk a little bit about the impact of COVID as well as that increase in certain types of services you've experienced?
It certainly has. It's unfortunately in so many ways, I think, been really good for business in that the demand for legal services has just been so exceptional, and not in a good way. We have seen with our probate practice this year, it's expanded 35% over last year. We've been working with families who are now in the position of probating the estates of loved ones who passed as a result of COVID and didn't have plans in place to anticipate that. And at the same time, we have served so many more people who are really concerned about their own mortality in the probate realm. But in the family law arena, the delays in justice, and I think related to the court closures, have just been so onerous for people who are facing so many different stressors. We have just by way of kind of one anecdote, we have a client who is a multi-generational Washingtonian who was supposed to have a very long anticipated divorce trial right at the end of March, and critical issues for her were going to center around alimony and child support. So she, as the caregiver and primary caregiver for her child, and her trial didn't happen, and during this time and in the interim, she's lost her job as a result of the pandemic, was forced to drain her savings, and had to go on to public benefits to sustain herself and her son. And so I think this is a moment where the delay in justice has kind of been an added trauma and stressor to so many families that are kind of on the precipice of falling further into levels of poverty and balancing just so many challenges in their day-to-day lives. And kind of much like Dan and Penelope shared, we have also kind of used this opportunity to band together with other legal service providers to really find creative ways to meet the need. And so we, at the very start of the pandemic, DC Affordable Law Firm partnered with 2 other agencies to kind of mobilize rapid response family law assistance to unrepresented and low-income litigants. And in this time, we really came to appreciate the technology challenges that so many people faced. And the demand there has been outrageous as well, in that we've received 450 requests from litigants last I checked this morning, and that's just since March. And really, families dealing with extreme custody and visitation challenges. So it's kind of affecting folks in every aspect of their lives.
Yeah, that's amazing, and it's those things you don't necessarily think about in your daily lives, that the way that it's impacting. But I think too, you mentioned cooperation, as Dan did. I think that's been one of the great things we've really seen come out of the pandemic. So many organizations working together with either complementary, and in some cases completely different services, but finding ways that they can work together and provide services now. As always happens with these things, I'm amazed we're almost out of time. But I know it's amazing, but I do want to give everybody at least a brief minute to talk about what you're most concerned about over the next 6 to 12 months, given the ongoing pandemic, and what it is that would be most helpful in addressing those concerns and helping continue to serve those clients. Penelope, do you want to get us started on that real quick?
Sure. So I continue to be concerned and worried about the young people who are still behind bars, not only because they're there, but also the lack of services that they're getting. So education, even for the best of us with young children at home, we're struggling with the virtual learning, but add on to that, trying to do virtual learning in a locked facility, and it's just not going well. Also, I think as much as we attorneys have really fought in order to have regular access to our clients for legal calls through virtual platforms, the young people who I serve still have not had an opportunity to connect with their family and their loved ones on a regular basis through those platforms, nor have they been able to physically see their family and give them a hug. And so that is really weighing on me, and knowing how difficult it is for a young person to be away from their family and then not to be able to have that regular visitation is incredibly challenging. I will say that one of the things that I was really pleased to see from the community is that as soon as the pandemic hit, we put out a request for items to be sent to the facilities to help pass the time, to from books and art supplies and games, things of that sort, to really help our young people remember or be reminded that there are individuals in the community that have not forgotten them, even when they can't see them.
That's great. No, absolutely. Dan, do you have take a couple seconds and share a little bit about your concerns and what would be most helpful?
Yeah, so obviously we're really concerned about the coming wave of evictions that we anticipate as a result of the pandemic and the economic crisis resulting from it. The current eviction moratorium is scheduled to expire on December 31st. And, we believe very strongly that a lawyer makes a difference, but really for a lot of our clients, the problem is financial. And so, I think that the way people can be involved is to, support public policies that provide the resources and the emergency rent assistance program type resources that are going to help our clients that are unable to pay their rent as a result of the financial situation because of the pandemic.
Yeah, and I think that's something, again, that could not only impact the lower income community, but definitely the forgotten middle that we talked about at the beginning of the session. Absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing that, Dan. Elizabeth, can you share briefly what it is you're concerned about?
Yeah, absolutely. Most of our concerns are, as folks are being released into the middle of a pandemic. Employment has been obviously very difficult to maintain for all of us, and particularly for folks who are in the types of works that are easy to get, types of employment that's easy to get when you're coming back home from incarceration. So we don't think that the economy and particularly the folks who are connected to OAR will be able to get back, quote unquote, on their feet in the next year and a half, 2 years. At OAR, we've already spent $80,000 in just, as Dan was saying, helping individuals with housing, paying for housing, for food, for transportation, for clothing, all those basic things that folks are really needing. And that's just in the first 3 months of this current fiscal year, $80,000. So could we spend a lot more? Definitely. So in terms of what we want the world to do, obviously, is to donate to the organizations who are providing the support that you see here, direct service, and also just be out there advocating for change to come. There's got to be a better way to do this. And the way we do this is through relationships and collectiveness. So so we're grateful to be on a platform that allows us to speak about these issues.
Yeah, absolutely. I think support is the basic thing that all of us need right now to make sure we can keep addressing these issues. Gabby, I don't mean at all to cut you short, but I'm getting the hook now to move on to my next panel. If we can share like 15, 20 seconds.
15, 20, I can do it. I think for me, I am just concerned about kind of the economic downturn that our city is experiencing. And, we have seen so many of our clients lose their income during the pandemic. And I have a real concern that more and more Washingtonians are going to slip further into low and modest income brackets. And I think really thinking about the needs of the city's modest income workers is important, and investment in organizations across sectors that are catering to and serving community members who are the most vulnerable and kind of most affected and disproportionately harmed by this pandemic is really going to be essential to a safe and thoughtful recovery for all.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. Well, with that, I want to thank all our panelists, not only for joining tonight, but for the amazing work that you're doing. I know you are on the front lines of responding to this crisis, and without you, I don't think we would be in the position we are, as good a position as we are. So thank you for that. To our audience, I appreciate you participating in this. We are now already starting our second series of conversations, so you can go back to the sessions and pick the one you want. Again, thank you again, all of the panelists, for all the great work you're doing. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care.